QSO Today episode 223, Denny Berg WB9MSM. This episode of QSO Today is sponsored by ICOM America, makers of the finest HF, VHF, and UHF transceivers for every level of amateur radio operator, and by QRP Labs, makers of the QCX single-band transceiver kit and now a new 10-watt all-band HF linear amplifier for the ham radio builder. Please support the QSO Today podcast by supporting these fine sponsors. Welcome to the QSO Today podcast. I'm Eric Guth Z1UG, your host. Denny Berg WB9MSM and I were supposed to have this QSO a few months ago when suddenly Denny sent me a message that he was in the hospital having 5 stents installed around his heart. We will touch on this event as a public service message at the very beginning because of its relevance to most of you who listen to the QSO Today podcast. However, Denny is back and in good shape and ready to talk about his ham radio journey. One of the things that impressed me about my QSO with Denny is how his easygoing, positive, and can-do attitude opened doors and opportunities throughout his life that made for his happy life. This is especially important for his amateur radio operating because it keeps him open to new ideas and technology as it is now being served up to us at light speed. I know that you'll enjoy this QSO with WB9MSM as much as I do. WB9MSM, this is Eric, 4Z1UG. Are you there, Denny?
Yes, I am, Eric. 4Z1UG, WB9MSM, Whiskey Baker 9, Mike Sierra Mike, Watertown, Wisconsin. Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear, Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Denny. Thanks for joining me on the QSO Today podcast. You know, we were supposed to speak a couple of months ago, and you canceled for medical reasons. I think those reasons are important, perhaps, for the listeners to hear. Why would sharing this story be helpful to our listeners?
Well, sure, Eric. Well, first of all, Eric, I had a situation here, actually back in July, where I went through a test at the advice of my wife, and I reluctantly did this because I said, hey, there's no problem with me, I'm doing fine. But I went through a coronary CT scan for calcium, and my score was very, very high. It was like 2,500. The gal gave me the results, and she told me, she said, you better take this to your doctor right away, and I did so immediately. Well, what happened then, Eric, is a number of things. First things first, though, I went to my doctor, and they set up a cardiology appointment, and I went to my cardiologist, and I went through what they call a nuclear stress test. The nuclear stress test more or less revealed that I had some very serious issues in my arteries. My arteries were blocked. The doctor, the cardiologist that is, decided that I would have to have more done to me, and they ended up doing a catheter. I had to go in for a procedure, and the procedure was going to be initially, Eric, it was going to be exploratory to see what the issue was. Well, long story short on that, they went in, and right away, the doctor decided that, oh man, this cannot wait. They put 3 stents into my LAD. LAD is the left aortic descending artery. Eric, that's commonly referred to in the medical world as the widowmaker. It's one of the number one arteries that goes to your heart and takes oxygen and oxygenated blood. Anyway, it was 80% blocked.
So, Denny, the reason that we're doing this public service or this PSA at the beginning of the QSO Today podcast is you didn't have a history of heart disease and you weren't feeling bad at all.
No, I was not. As a matter of fact, I'm glad you asked that or brought that up, Eric. I was asymptomatic. I had no issues. And as I said, I reluctantly did this at my wife's request. My wife went through it and had a score of 9. I repeat, 9. I had a score of 2,500. So basically, yeah, that was like, can I say this? 2,500 reveals, when you look at the score, that I had a 99% chance of having a heart attack. I repeat, 99%. Well, with that said, my LAD artery was 80% blocked, and it's blocked 80% in the resting phase. When I'm exercising or doing something else, it is constricted even more. It could be 90%. Well, the doctor went in and took care of that, Eric, and I was very grateful. I also had another one that was blocked, but he could not do them both at the same time. I had such a great doctor. I just feel so grateful. But the other one, they had to go into 2 weeks later because, Eric, they put a special dye into your system, and the dye can be very, very dangerous if it gets into your kidneys, so they want to flush it from you. And that's why he couldn't do both of them at the same time, because they could not warrant keeping that dye in there for a length of time that would take for doing the two procedures. So he decided to come in later to get the other one.
So, Denny, as we say here in Israel, thanks God for your speedy recovery, and you should only have good health. And now we can talk about ham radio. I don't have a history. Now, your family doesn't have a history of heart disease?
No. My dad lived to be 92 years old, and I tell you, no.
So it's a good thing if you can have a coronary CT scan for calcium, even if you don't have a history of heart disease in your family, or you're feeling okay,
yeah,
and you're over 60.
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably a good idea.
It is.
Can we start at the beginning of your ham radio story, Denny? When and how did it start for you?
Sure, that's wonderful, Eric. Well, actually, I got my novice license in 1970. Actually started getting into ham radio in 1969. But 1970, I was licensed, and I was licensed as WN9DKW. That's WN9 Dirty Kitchen Window. And I was licensed along with two other hams in the neighborhood. My Elmer was Bill Bailey, WB9CYB, Charlie Yankee Baker. And three of us boys got our license at the same time. WN9DKU was David, and then John was WN9DKV, and myself, WN9DKW. And back in 1970. It's coming up in 2020. It'll be 50 years here.
Well, how about that? Well, what spurred this interest?
Well, the guy kitty corner from my house put up a quad antenna. Yeah, a quad antenna. And, of course, my younger brother saw that, and he ended up going over there, and he came back and told me the man's a ham radio operator. So one thing led to another, and a bunch of the neighborhood kids all got to meet this ham radio guy, and three of us actually got into ham radio then. But a number of other people didn't really pursue it, but the three of us boys did.
Now, was that guy Bill?
Yeah, Bill Bailey.
So the neighbor was Bill Bailey.
Yeah, yep, Bill Bailey.
Now, did you have an interest in electronics even before this, or did everything start with Bill?
Everything started with Bill, and I never ever, and I still don't, do any shortwave listening. I was not a CB operator. I never was. I never really got into CB. I never was a shortwave listener, but Bill Bailey was the ham radio guy, and that's all I'd been as a ham. I never got into the other shortwave or CB.
So you and your two friends now have licenses. What happened after that? How old were you guys?
Oh, yeah, we were all in the 15 to 16 years old. I was 16, and I think John and Dave were both 15. John is still licensed. He's still licensed, and we're very, very good friends. His call is N9EAJ. He changed his call, N9E at John's. But, that's kind of it, you know. We had a lot of fun in those early days. We had a lot of fun. And in 1973, I got my general. 1983, I got my extra down in Chicago. We took a train down there and took our exams in Chicago, a whole bunch of us.
Do you remember your first rig?
Oh, yeah, I could never forget it. As a matter of fact, if you even go on my QRZ site, you'll see it. I'm very proud of that rig. I actually had an old Helicrafters SX140 receiver and a World Radio Labs Globe DSB 100. And I ran, Eric, I want to say somewhere between 40 and 50 watts. And, of course, we were crystal controlled. I had a 80-meter dipole and a 40-meter dipole that were up in the trees. And the 40 worked out real well on 15 CW. So I had a bunch of crystals there and just had a ball playing with that. Very, very good time.
Now, being so close to Bill, Caddy Corner, did you ever have any problems operating at the same time that he was?
No, not really. No, not at all. No.
you remember your first contact?
No, I don't, Eric. That's one thing I have to say. I don't remember my very first contact. I have to say I don't.
Now, it seems to me on 40 and 80, you probably, I guess you were also on 15. Was that where you started working your first DX?
Yeah, I worked DX, but mainly, mainly stateside for the most part. I remember, and I talk to my friends sometimes about this, but I remember working Canadian, and it was such a thrill because the Canadians a lot of times could operate phone in RCW band, and there was many a time that I would call, they'd come on near my frequency where my crystal was. They'd be on phone, and I'd contact them via CW. And it was such a thrill to hear them give your call letters, talking, and come back and say WN9DKW, the Canadian would, and give their call a VE3 or whatever it might be. And it was just kind of neat. That was really cool back in those days. I still remember that. So, no, I didn't work a lot of DX. I mainly worked stateside and some Canadians and maybe some DX on 15 meters, but nothing of any real. I wasn't really hooked on DX at that time. It was just to make a contact was me.
Now, did you develop an interest in electronics, or were you just like the operating side of ham radio?
Well, a lot of the operating side, I built a Heathkit HW12, which I was quite pleased with. Right around this time, shortly after I got my general, I had an HW12 that I built. Kit form, of course, in the old days of Heathkit. But no, I really didn't take an interest in electronics no, I didn't. I was more into the operating. I decided to go, when I graduated from high school, I decided to go to the Brown Institute of Broadcasting in Minneapolis. And I thought that's what I was destined for, was to be a broadcaster.
So ham radio played a part in the choices that you made for your education and career because you thought you would be a broadcaster, not an electronic engineer.
Right. Yeah, no, not an electronics engineer, a broadcaster. I thought for sure that was my destiny. I thought this is it. And I joked around for a couple of years, out of high school. I had different jobs, job hopping and whatnot. So I decided, hey, this is it. I'm going to go to broadcasting school. And my dad was all for it. And at the time, I don't know if you're aware of it, Eric, but Brown Institute of Radio Broadcasting in Minneapolis was probably one of the premier schools in the United States. It was huge in the broadcasting those days. This would be in the mid-'70s.
No, I wasn't aware of it, actually.
Oh, yeah. The Brown Institute of Radio Broadcasting was on East Lake Street. And, I decided, actually in December of 75, I decided to go to school there. And that was my destiny. And I said, hey, I'm going to be a broadcaster. It didn't turn out that way, but anyway, that's what I thought I was going to do.
So what happened?
Well, it was interesting. I went to school there, and I was enjoying it, and I was doing well in it. WBIB, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Yeah, it was very cool. When I think about it, I think about the days that we had together there with the students, and very, very commercialized with broadcasting in those days. I have to remember that their time was money time, and it really was. I mean, they really stressed how to put together commercials, and it was very, very commercialized, no doubt about it. I guess it was more commercialized than I ever really anticipated. I was thinking, it was different. It certainly was not like talk radio. It was. Hey, you got to sell airtime, and that's really, really what we did. We did an awful lot of, making sure that we could put together commercials, and I got really disenfranchised with that. I was there for around 3 months, and I got somewhat doubting, in my mind that this is going to be my career. So out of frustration, I ended up dropping out of school. I was doing well. I wasn't failing or anything like that. And I was kind of, to be honest with you, I was lost. I didn't know what to do. So I ended up joining the Navy.
This was after Vietnam too, right? Because I think the draft was over by this point.
Yeah, it was just getting over, and Yeah, it was just getting over. It just was getting over. You're exactly right. So I ended up going down there to Minneapolis, and one thing led to another. I talked to a recruiter, and I actually got to be honest, I was probably somewhat depressed. I didn't know what I wanted because I had indicated to you earlier that I jumped around from job to job. So here I was, 21, 22 years old, and I joined the Navy. I just said, that's it. 21 years old, I think I was. I joined the Navy. And back in those days, Eric, I joined the Navy. I'll never forget this. I joined the Navy, and this was in Minneapolis. And I had only a few days, I repeat, a few days before I would report to boot camp. It wasn't like, hey, this is a delayed enlistment. You're going to spend 6 months and then you'll come in the Navy. No, it was a very short time. My recollection is 3 to 5 days, and I was in the Navy because I remember I was in Minneapolis. I'm from Watertown, Wisconsin, so I ended up going back home and told my mom and dad. I said, hey, I joined the Navy, and I remember I had to go back up there, and they put me on a plane along with a bunch of other guys, and we were shipped out to Great Lakes Naval Station there, recruit. And that's the same place my dad went through, and my uncle. My uncle went through the same thing, but they were, of course, through in the earlier times during the Second World War with my dad and my uncle. They were Navy, and they went through there. So my dad was, I don't want to say he was angry at me or anything for dropping out of school. I think he just understood that you have to find yourself, and I knew I'd find myself in the Navy real quick. So
what did you do in the Navy?
Next 4 years, I was a hospital corpsman. I was a medic, more or less. I was a medic, hospital corpsman. I went through training there and went through boot camp, of course, in Great Lakes, and I ended up going out to San Diego, and they put me through the #1 school in the Navy for medical. I was stationed at Balboa Naval Hospital, and that, if you've never seen it, is quite a sight to see. That whole thing of San Diego is just amazing. But anyway, that's where I went to school. And it was quite an adventure. So I ended up becoming a hospital corpsman in the Navy.
And now a message from ICOM America. As we get past the contest season and into the holidays, it's time to put an ICOM radio on your holiday wish list. So over the next few weeks, I will go into a deeper dive on the ICOM rigs that you should consider. The IC7610 is the SDR rig that every ham wants and should be on your holiday wish list. The high-performance RMDR software-defined radio has the ability to pick out the faintest of signals even in the presence of stronger adjacent signals. Did I say that the IC7610 has a direct sampling dual receivers so that you can be in two places at the same time? Work the contest on 20 meters while getting ready to pounce on 40. The IC7610 will therefore change the world's definition of an SDR transceiver. What this means is that ICOM engineers have taken SDR design to new heights by loading this rig with technology that reduces phase noise, for example, while providing true SDR functionality. You have heard before that the IC7610 has dual digicell. These are RF filters designed by ICOM engineers that prevent the receiver from being swamped by large out-of-band signals when sampling in-band signals. This is ideal when strong signals are received in a contest pileup or from broadcast stations on adjacent frequencies or bands. Additional features include, but are not limited to, a beautiful touchscreen display in addition to tuning knobs and switches, a 100-watt output, built-in antenna tuner, dual receivers and dual spectrum scopes, a DVI-D connector for an external display, and an SD memory card slot for saving data. So if you're looking to have the most state-of-the-art and beautiful HF transceiver for a fair and incredible price, then check out the ICOM IC7610 at your ham radio dealer near you, or go to www.icomamerica.com/amateur to find out more about this amazing rig. And when you finally make that holiday purchase, tell the dealer that you heard about the ICOM IC7610 on QSO today. And now back to our QSO. It's not the worst place to be stationed, I don't think, right?
No, I actually loved it. And I'll tell you a little amateur radio story about San Diego. When I was out there, it was very intense, of course, with the training I had to go through. It was very intense. But anyway, one weekend, and I don't know how I found this out. I when I was preparing for this broadcast, I was thinking to myself, I still can't remember, but Coronado Island. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
Sure.
It's quite a place. And anyway, I was told of an amateur radio operator that lived on Coronado Island. One of my commanding officers knew the guy and said, "Hey, you should go see so-and-so," and they gave me his address, and I jumped onto a bus and I went out to Coronado Island to meet the gentleman. And I'll never, ever forget that, going to Coronado Island. The fellow was an elderly guy, as I recall, and I just remember talking to him, and I saw pictures in his house of all these different people, and somewhat famous people. And the one that comes to my mind was there was a picture there of J. Edgar Hoover. And I asked the gentleman, I don't remember what his call was. That's to say, I just don't remember anymore what this guy's call was. But he said, yeah, him and J. Edgar Hoover were pretty good friends. So I thought, wow. I thought this is kind of interesting. I just spent some time with him there, looked at his Radio Shack, and then, of course, I had to get back to base. But I thought it was very, very interesting to have that opportunity. And again, you know, it goes back to the old thing, Eric. Amateur radio operators, I don't care where you are, they always seem to have an open door for a fellow ham. And that's how this gentleman was. Just a real nice guy. And like I said, I enjoyed my meeting him, and he shared information with me and things like that about his station. I got to say, that's the thing about amateur radio that makes it so much fun. Is it's really kind of neat.
Were you active in the Navy as an amateur radio operator?
Yes, I was, Eric, and that's a very, very interesting question you just asked me, and I'll tell you something, a very interesting question. Well, anyway, I finished up there, and I graduated from the Naval School of Health Science. We started out with like 30-some students in our class, and we ended up graduating, I think, 15 or 16. It was quite a thing. People would bail out because they didn't do well in school, and they'd send them right out to sea. But anyway, I was very fortunate. I graduated. Well, with my graduation, they ended up sending me. They said, "You're going to go to Hawaii," which I was just totally ecstatic about. And they said, "You're going to Pearl Harbor." And I thought, oh, my gosh, I'm going to Pearl Harbor. And, yes, that's where I went. I flew out of Travis Air Force Base on a C-130 and went right to Travis Air Force Base and Hickam in Hawaii. And from Hickam, I went to Pearl Harbor, and I was stationed at Pearl Harbor there. I was destined, from what I understand, I was destined to go to the Kitty Hawk. And everything was kind of moving in that direction that I'd be there. And one thing led to another, and I don't know, if you're in the military, you're at the military's expense, of course, and one thing led to another, and I ended up in the Marines. So I ended up over at Kaneohe Bay Marine Corps Air Station. And what happened was they needed me, and one thing led to another, and I ended up at Kaneohe Bay, which turned out to be really neat because I had an opportunity there, of course, being with the Marines. But they had a Mars station there that was second to none. It was absolutely beautiful, Eric. And I got to, the story there is quite interesting in itself. I got on the base, and I was stationed there then, and I was stationed right with the Marines. And we had a dispensary there, and they put me in there, and I was working with the Marines doing different things, all kinds of things. But I got to meet the captain of the Marine Corps for the comm center. The comm center is the communications center, which also housed their Mars station, the military amateur radio station there. And I'll tell you something, that was neat. This captain took a liking to me, I think probably because I was a corpsman. The Marines take very good care of the corpsmen. I tell you what, I will tell you, I can talk to you in depth about that, but they take very good care of the corpsmen. But anyway, the captain says, "I'm going to give you a key to the Mars station." And I thought, wow. So in other words, I could operate the radio station there whenever I wanted. He made it very clear that the key was mine, but just don't be stupid. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I really was was really pleased because I never ever in my wildest dream anticipated that. And sure enough, I got to go in there and operate the station, which, like I say, it was all really top-notch equipment, all Collins S-lines. And back in those days, Eric, they had the real radio teletypes. And the guys that were in there, they were active duty Marines. They were very good to me. And I just come up when they finished with duty, and I say, hey, I'm going to get on the air for a while. No problem, Doc. You do what you want to do. So I'd stay up there sometimes at night till 9 o'clock at night and just have a great time. And I just really enjoyed that. It was just a really super great thing. So, yeah, I got to operate. I operated the station. The amateur station that they had there was KH6 BGS, Kilo Hotel 6, beer, gin, and scotch. And I made all kinds of oodles and oodles of contacts from that location. I had so much fun.
Now this was
where I got.
This was post-war, post-Vietnam War, right? So the Mars station itself was not active.
Negative. They still used it. They were still using it, Eric. They still were doing phone patches and things like that. But
okay.
It still was, yes, it was still being used. But it was not by any means to the extent that it was during the Vietnam War. So they downsized it from that standpoint, but there was still activity going on there.
Did you operate as a Mars operator?
No, I did not, because they were kind of strict about that. I didn't have what they called a quote MOS for that, Eric. The military is very, very rigid with a lot of regulatory things, that you must be trained in this and this. And even though I was an amateur radio operator, I was not trained with an MOS for doing traffic handling. So no, I did not, which was fine with me. I didn't mind. They actually had guys that would do it, and they had guys that would be at that radio thing there that were actually manning the place. And they did all kinds of different things. Not just Mars stuff. They were doing communication for all different kinds of things there. So it was very, very interesting. But no, I was not quote a Mars operator.
So what happened after you left the Navy?
Oh yeah, after I left the Navy, well, I tell you what, I served 4 years in the Navy, and after I left the Navy, I got to say I was at this time very, very I was looking to see what I would do, because I only wanted to do 4 years in the Navy, and I didn't want to stay in for a lifetime. I decided that I didn't want to do. So I had a younger brother, oh gosh, he's 4 years younger than me, who had just graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. And he got talking to me, and he said, hey, you should go there. And I said, well, I'm not really set up for college. I didn't think I'd ever want to go to college. Well, long story short on that, I ended up going to speak to a counselor there. And, Eric, I was entitled to, because I was honorably discharged and everything went fine with the Navy, that the counselor at the college there, UW-Whitewater, which is, by the way, it's about 30 miles south of Watertown, they actually had a counselor there tell me that, you know what, you were on the GI Bill. And I was actually entitled to the true GI Bill. And I said, well, what does that mean? They said, well, you basically are not going to pay a penny for any college. Well, believe it or not, Eric, that really sounded great. So I ended up going to college, and I graduated. I never spent a penny towards my college education, but I graduated, Eric, from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater with a degree in business administration, with major emphasis in human resource. Back in that day, they called it personnel, with a minor in occupational safety. And that's what I did. And it was very, very good. I had a very good college education in the 4 years in college, and it was just outstanding. And then, of course, I got a career when I graduated. I got into a career. They had a very nice club there at the college, too. I got to meet some real nice guys at our club. And one of the professors there, I don't remember his call, but his name was Dr. Jim Young. He was biology teacher. I actually had him for a teacher, but he also was our guy in charge of the radio club, and he was a very nice man. I got to meet some really, really nice other students that were amateurs, as well as employees that were amateurs, and it was kind of fun. I enjoyed that.
So you made a career then in human resources or personnel, is that right?
Yes, you bet it is. I graduated from college, and yes, I went right to work almost a short time later after I graduated. I graduated in December and ended up getting a job the following year, like in, what was it, April or March? I can't remember, sometime shortly after I graduated. And I went to work for that company, and I was able to retire from the company after over 25 years, and I was really tickled when I had that opportunity. So it was a very, very good career. I ended up working for a company that was a father and two sons that founded the company, and they're great people, excellent people. I still have a rapport with one of them. Very, very good man. So from that standpoint, it was a very good career. The company they owned, and then they sold it to the British. And the British bought the company, and I was able to have a very, very good career with the British. I ended up going, and they took very good care of me, and I mean extremely good care of me. They sent me to England on many of occasions, where I went there and I did training. I actually ended up becoming I don't know if you're going to know what this is, but it's a Six Sigma black belt. I did 5 weeks of training over in the UK. And it was very, very nice. It was very rewarding. So I became a black belt in Six Sigma. Very, very tough training. I remember it was really extremely difficult training. I got to tell you, and it basically pertained to quality and continuous improvement. So that was something that I was really very fortunate about. Again, when the British owned the company, they really took good care of me, too. But I used to travel over to Cadillac, Michigan all the time with our sister company over there in different locations, Barcelona, Spain, and whatnot. So I got a chance to travel with the company, and especially when I became a Six Sigma black belt.
I actually found that, and that's in the show notes. Now, you were an active amateur radio operator throughout this whole time, and you describe on your QRZ page that you had a number of classic old rigs, at least for those of us who've been around a long time, they're classics. What were they, and what's your favorite?
Oh, yeah, I did have a number of classic radios. I had so many, Eric. Again, part of it for me was to get these old rigs and fix them up and get them on the air. My favorite radios, believe it or not, were Swans. I loved Swans. I always seem to have a Swan 500, and I'm really glad you bring that question up, because if you look at my QRZ site, you'll see a brand new Swan that I had on there. That's a Swan 500 with the SX16B filter, and there's kind of a picture of me superimposed into the picture. But yeah, I love Swans. I had over the years many, many different Swans. Swan 500. I never owned any other Swans but Swan 500. I also, I had told you and the listeners there that I really liked the Collins S line. Well, once I got a really good job like I had, I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to buy myself not a brand new. I mean, you couldn't buy a brand new one then. Collins S line, and I did that. I had my own Collins S line. I still got some pictures of it. That's all I have left. But I had that for some time there, Eric, and it was really, really nice to have a Collins S line. But anyway, I had that and ended up selling it, and it's gone. It lasted so long, and I moved on to something else. But I've had so many different radios over the years. I had Gonsets. I had, I don't know, just so many different ones, Eric, that it was fun, because back in those days, I actually had my own rigs and my own tube checker and all kinds of different things that I could check the tubes and put another, tubes in them. And if you had to do a little work on them, you could work on them. However, since then, I have really moved to the solid state. I really don't have anything like that anymore. with the exception of my Ameritron AL811. That's got tubes in it, but otherwise, no, everything else they have now is solid state.
And now this message from QRP Labs. Well, Hans G0UPL has done it again. QRP Labs announces a new 10-watt linear HF power amplifier kit for just $26 US. That's right, $26 United States currency. This power amplifier comfortably produces 10 watts from a 12-volt DC supply for every mode, including the high-duty cycle digital modes. This new linear amplifier provides 26 dB of gain from 2 to 30 MHz with a plus or minus 1 dB gain flatness over the entire range. This 10-watt HF linear power amplifier kit has no surface mount components to solder. There are a small number of transformers that need to be wound, and assembly requires care and patience. If you're a beginner, you can still do this kit. The push-pull driver stage uses two BS170 transistors in the amplifier found in the soft-walk transmitter design. This final uses two IRF510 transistors in push-pull configuration. Yes, this humble low-cost MOSFET is really capable of excellent performance all the way up to 10-meter band and beyond. Hans says the short lead lengths and PCB layout are extremely important to the success of this kit. This kit includes a huge heatsink to prevent overheating even during a 100% duty cycle. Hans sent me a message that he tested key down for 1 hour at 10 watts full power with no forced air cooling. He tested again for 15 minutes at 20 watts, 100% continuous duty cycle with no forced air cooling. He even tested this new power amplifier with a 20-volt DC power supply into an open load, a shorted load, and various mismatches without instability, oscillation, or failure. So if you have a QCX or any other QRP transmitter and want to boost its output power with a highly reliable linear power amplifier at an amazing price, then click on the link in this week's show notes page to tell Hans that you heard it here on QSO Today. QRP Labs is my favorite kit company. It should be yours too. QRP Labs. And now back to our QSO. So what's the current rig now, Denny?
The current rig that I have that I use for the most part is my Kenwood TS590S. I have that, and I actually have a couple of TS2000s. They're nice radios, and I've had the one TS2000 since 2001, and I mainly use that just for 2 meters right now. 2 meters for our local repeater. I don't get on a lot of repeaters, but I do get on our 2-meter repeater. I like it. We got one here in Watertown with the Watertown Amateur Radio Club, and we have our own repeater, and it's kind of nice. The boys just put a D-Star repeater on there too, so that's really moving up in the technology. But yeah, they got a D-Star on there. I have not gotten into D-Star. I think it's a great thing. I just haven't gotten into it yet. But a lot of the guys are starting to move in that direction, which is great. I 100% support it. I just haven't done it yet. But yeah, I got 2 of them. And the other TS2000 that I have it sitting on a 40-meter dipole. I have a number of wire antennas up, including a Yagi. I have an old Mosley Classic 33. I have that up about 40 feet or so. And then I got some wire antennas that I have up there. Thinking on it, I have a high power, really nice antenna. I never would have made DXCC on ADCW without it. And the gentleman that owns that company is just so great. Fantastic guy, but the high power 8040. And that's what I have. Originally it was 160, 80, and 40. I took the traps off for 160, and it's just 80 and 40. And like I said, I never would have got 80 meter without that antenna. And the DXCC without that antenna. I did it on that. Oh, that was so fantastic. That's a whole other story in itself.
I saw a picture of your shack on the upper right corner. There is a spectrum display. Is that spectrum display coming from the Kenwoods? Yes. Basically, let me just share some information with you now. I really am into software. I don't know if you want me to go down that road or not, but I'm really into software. I'm a software freak, not building as much these days, but I sure am into software. And there's software out there, and basically what I did with my 590 is I was able to put an SDR
with that. What I did is I went inside my 590 and I tapped into it, and I actually got a cord coming out the back that enables me to go and do SDR. So I actually have the SDR Play 1. I got the older one there. And I went to my 590 and I tapped into a jumper there, and you're able to go in. Actually, the jumper I went into, and if anybody's ever interested, they can email me. I can send them information on it. But the CN101, and I jumped into that, and I'm able to go in and do SDR. I use the HD SDR software, and that is really, really nice software. It allows me to more or less turn my 590 and use that and use the display. And I can do some clicking on there, and I can go to different stations when I see them come up on the display. It really works nice. So it's one of those things. That's just one piece of software that I have.
Denny, in order to use the 590 with SDR, you have some kind of a sound card or something like that that's taking that, or using some kind of a DVB dongle or something like that that's taking that, it's the LO or something out of the 590?
Yeah, basically I have the SDR Play. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Is it's software and hardware, or is it just software?
It's both. Actually, it's both. I'm mainly using it for the hardware, however, Eric. I'm using it mainly for the hardware, and they take the hardware and I put it into HDSDR software.
Okay.
Sure, it's kind of confusing.
No, it's not at all. Okay, so I brought up on my screen. So essentially, the SDR Play is a black box that's taking information out of the back of your 590 and turning it into something that the computer can see.
Yeah, basically that's it. Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's 100% correct.
So an old rig like a 590 can become an SDR receiver. How much of the band can you see at one time?
Oh, geez, I can see quite a bit, Eric. I want to say, I don't know. I can see it pretty far. I mean, I can see like 100, 200
kilohertz. You can use it to see if anybody's in the band while you're out there calling CQ.
Exactly, Eric. Yeah, I can see a lot of bandwidth. I mean, it's crazy. It's really crazy. So I can see a lot. So that little unit really does something. What's interesting about the 590, it did not allow that capability without doing what I did, going inside and going into the jumper. Now, the 590SG does do that. You don't have to do any jumper or anything. You have that capability without doing the jumper. I got this information from another fellow, and he passed it along to me. Actually, I'm trying to think it was called WE1 or something, WE1X. It just comes to my mind. Yeah, WE1X provided me with that information. It's really good. So, I mean, yeah, and if anybody needs it, just send me an email. I'm good on QRZ.com, and I'd be more than happy to forward it to them if they got a 590 and they want to make that. It's a really no-brainer. It's really easy to do. Just go inside and get that cable. And the cable that you use is from an old, you remember they used to have the cordless phones.
Sure.
And they had battery. You take that battery connector, and you snip it, and you put it on the back of the radio, and you can pull it out of there, and you set it up into the SDR Play. So it works out pretty nice.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Your QRZ page shows lots of pictures of DX awards. So you got into DX, and you've actually completed DXCC using FT8 last year. How long have you been in DX, and what do you like about DXing?
Oh, gosh, I tell you, Eric, I'm so glad you asked that question. And I got to be honest with you. I am, as you see, if you look at my web or my QRZ page, you'll see that I am a DXer. My true joy is HF, and true joy is DXing. Now, with that being said, yeah, I've got a lot of different awards. I got the 5-band DXCC. Actually, I got 7-band Workball State. Actually, 20 meters, just totally CW. I'm a real CW guy. I'm not going to say I'm a high-speed CW operator because I am not. I feel real comfortable, 20 to 25 words per minute, real comfortable. I could copy that all day long. I can't do the 40 words or anything like that, so I'm not a real high-speed guy. But I have fun with that CW, and I have fun chasing DX on CW. That's actually how I really, really got my 5-band DXCC, was with the CW on 80 meters. And actually CW on all the bands, but CW on 80 meters, just to give you an example how much fun DXing can be. I'll never forget the morning. This is a couple of years ago. I was on, and I actually was on 80 meters, and I heard a Japanese station. The first time I ever heard a Japanese station on CW, and worked the guy, and it wasn't 5 minutes later, he already had me uploaded into Logbook of the World. And I thought, wow, this is cool. But it's so neat to hear that band open to Japan, for example. Or the other day, Eric, I don't know, it appears maybe you're not into DXing, but we just finished up with a real nice DXpedition, the Victor Papa 6 Delta, to Ducie Island. Ducie Island is located right near the Pitcairns. It's an island there. They had a DXpedition where they had, I want to say, 12, 15 hands, which a good majority of them were U.S. guys. But they actually was an international team, and they were there for, 10 days or so. And I worked them on a lot of different bands, but the real thrill was when I worked them on 80 CW. That was neat. I got to tell you, Eric, if you look on your S meter and you start seeing a guy sending S9 and it's coming from the Pitcairn Islands and you're on 80 meters CW and the meters just, it was just a thrill to work the guy. And they too uploaded to LOTW shortly after they got back. I made a small donation to the DXpedition, and I think that's only proper to help defray some of the cost. And sure enough, they LOTW'd me. It was not a brand new contact as far as all-time new one, but it certainly was on CW. I never had them on CW before. I had them on phone from, 7-8 years ago. But it was so much fun. But you get bit by this bug, and HF in itself, Eric, is such a thrill because HF is where it's at, in my opinion. I love the fact that you can come down in the Radio Shack and your antenna is all you have, and you hear stations and you transmit the stations with the antenna that you have. You're not going through any internet or anything of that nature. It's the real magic of the radio and the antenna, and it's actually quite captivating. It really makes you excited. I feel anyway. I enjoy it very, very much. So DXing is, it's in my blood.
I saw a bunch of press releases in every language that last year you worked 100 countries and got DXCC working using FT8. How long did it take you to do that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Eric, I want to just, thank you very much for bringing this up. Yeah, first of all, FT8, and I like FT8 too. I think it's the greatest mode. Maybe not, but you know what? I like it. And I think that's where we have to be as hands. We should be very open to trying different things. There's guys I know that won't even give it any time because they say, no, it's not good. It's not good. Well, I think we should work together. But back in 2017, July, K1JT and his team came up with this FT8. They started releasing FT8. I did not get into it until September of 2017. So it was a number of months later. But I got so excited working it because the software is free, and everything is cool. And again, you have this all on your computer screen. I've got the one computer screen I have is a 27-inch monitor, and the one right to the right of it is a 24-inch. And then I've got the smaller one I got is what is it, a 12? I don't know, it's a 14-inch or something. I can't remember, but it's an HP. But anyway, you get on there with that, and it's so much fun watching that come across the screen. But I got worked all states in 6 weeks. 6 weeks, Eric. Again, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. It is easy. I'm not going to joke about it. It is. But it's also fun. And it took me 4 months, Eric, to get DXCC with FT8. 4 months. And as I stress to people, and I know a lot of people don't like it, but I stress to people, it's good for amateur radio. Hey, I mean, let's think of this. We should be embracing all these modes as some new frontier that needs to be explored. And I still get on FT8. I don't get on it all the time, but I enjoy it. And I think that's where it's at. You got to look at this. Just right prior to FT8, I was getting on JT65. I only made a few contacts on there. And then the FT8 got me, and I said, wow, this is really cool, because it reminded me, I'm a substitute teacher since I retired, and it reminded me of the kids at school. You know, they get some free time. They're all playing games. Well, the FT8 is almost like a game, because it's going kind of fast, and I love it. I just think it's cool. So anyway, that's my plug for FT8, and I'm going to stick to it.
Are you active in an amateur radio club there?
Yes, I am, actually. I'm active in the Watertown Amateur Radio Club, UA. The club was founded back in 1982, and we've got, I guess, Eric, somewhere around 30-some members. I don't know, I can't, I'm actually the secretary, but it's somewhere around 30-some members. Somewhere right in that range. But yes, I am active.
Now, you mentioned that the Watertown Amateur Radio Club maintains a repeater or two, and you now have D-Star. Does the radio club also do activities or events?
Oh, yes, absolutely. One event that we're very, very big into is annually, each year, a Condom Walk. And I don't know, I'm sure you've never heard of that, but it's a community that's about 15 miles east of Watertown. They have every year an art festival, and it's one of the largest in this part of the United States. They have a huge art festival. Well, we go there as a radio club, and we provide communication for them. It's a Saturday, Sunday type of an event, and we go there and we provide the communication for their event. And we've been doing that for many years, many years. And it's a good community event for our club to be involved with something that's community-based, So that is and I say it's a big event because they get a lot of people coming through there that see us with our radios and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's kind of neat. We all wear our vest, our colored, orange vest. And, every year we do that. We've been doing it for many, many years. And the Watertown Amateur Radio Club gets involved in different things, but that is one of the biggest things that we get involved with, and it's really a good event.
What excites you the most about what's happening in amateur radio now?
Well, I'll tell you what, Eric, what excites me is really, and again, I'm going to just touch on this FT8 thing there just for a minute, because, I think the technology, Eric, that is going on today in amateur radio supersedes, in my opinion, again, it's only my opinion, that what was going on years ago. I mean, it's going today at lightning speed. I mean, with the advent of the computer and ham radio is just such a great fit together. I mean, I don't know, Eric. The ham radio and computer are just it's like a really good marriage. It's that type of technology that I really, really try to embrace. And that's why I have so many different things that I get involved with, and mainly into the software side of it, because I have so many different programs that I get in, everything from DX Atlas to CW Skimmer to whatnot. I just think there's so many things there. So it's the technology I like, Eric, and it really is fun. And the FT8 part of it is just one thing that really, technology-wise, if a person looks at what's happening with the low noise and making contacts under those conditions, it's phenomenal. So I just say that's it. The technology really excites me.
Denny, would you have any advice to give to new or returning hams to the hobby?
To new and returning hams, I'd say embrace a lot of different things and come into it with an open mind that you're anxious to learn. And I say, Eric, I say that in only one sense, that there's a lot of opportunities in amateur radio for different modes and operation-wise. You can go into a lot of different things. Our hobby is not just limited to VHF or UHF or HF. I mean, you can go all different kind of areas. I have never really embarked into the satellite part of amateur radio. I have not gotten into D-Star as of yet. But I mean, there's so many things. So I say, be open-minded. Look at amateur radio as an opportunity to learn something, and I think you'd be quite pleased.
Denny, you've been a wonderful guest on the QSO Today podcast. I'm so glad that you're feeling much better, and that we actually had a chance to do this QSO a few months after we were planning on it. So with that, I want to wish you 73, and thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, you bet, Eric. And I want to say thank you so much, Eric, for inviting me to be interviewed. I'm so used to, when I was working, doing the interviewing, and I got to tell you, Eric, I look forward to your podcast each week. And I sincerely mean that, because you always have some very interesting guests on your podcast, but I really enjoy listening to them. And I'm very thankful. Thank you very much, Eric, and I wish you the best of 73s.
73. That concludes this episode of QSO Today. I hope that you enjoyed this QSO with Denny. Please be sure to check out the show notes that include links and information about the topics that we discussed. Go to www.qsotoday.com and put in WB9MSM, that's Mike Sugar Mike, in the search box at the top of the page. I appreciate your guest suggestions. Keep them coming. My thanks to both ICOM America and QRP Labs for their support of the QSO Today podcast. Please show your support of these fine sponsors by clicking on their links in the show notes pages, or when you make your purchases, that you say that you heard it here on QSO Today. You may notice that some of the episodes are transcribed into written text. If you'd like to sponsor this or any of the other episodes into written text, please contact me. Support the QSO Today podcast by first joining the QSO Today email list by pressing the subscribe buttons on the show notes pages. I will not spam you or share your email address with anyone. Become a listener sponsor monthly or annually by clicking on the sponsor buttons on the show notes page. I am grateful for any way that you show appreciation and support. It makes a big difference. QSO Today is now available on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Libsyn, and TuneIn, as well as the iTunes Store. If you own an Amazon Echo, you can say, "Beep, play the QSO Today podcast from TuneIn." I still use Stitcher to listen to podcasts on my smartphone. The links to all of these services are on the show notes pages on the right side. Until next time, this is Eric for Z1UG 73. The QSO Today podcast is a product of KEG Media Inc., who is solely responsible for its content.